Welcome to the podcast about venture capital, where investors and founders alike can learn how VCs make decisions and reach conviction. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Welcome to another special release of Investor Stories. On this installment, the experts discuss a startup that they did not invest in, why they passed, and if there was a key learning that now informs their approach. Here's the segment called Why I Passed. On today's special segment, we have Nikhil Basu Trivedi. Nikhil, can you tell us a story about a good or a bad pass, a story about a startup that you passed on?
Oh, I have lots of, I think of all the passes that led to massive companies as being bad passes. I don't know if that's exactly your definition, but one that comes to mind is Robinhood, which I looked at in 2014 at the Series A, and Robinhood's now worth, I think, $11 billion in its last private valuation. And so that is a very painful pass. I did a bunch of work on it and loved spending time with Vlad and Basu, the founders. But we just couldn't get there. And so that's one obviously that keeps me up.
On today's special segment, we have Alfred Chuang of Race Capital. Alfred, can you tell us a story about a good or a bad pass, a story about a startup that you passed on?
I tell you, I the most memorable one that I have is the following. So I have a good friend. His name is Eric Yuan. So obviously he's founded Zoom. He's one of the most admired CEO on my list. Actually, when I had lunch with Eric right before the pandemic, at the lunch halfway through the lunch, he asked me a question. I said, well, Alfred, what CEO do you really admire right now? Who are the? Give me some names. He wanted to learn, right? So, and I couldn't give him an answer. And I think later on, after I got in the car, I drove home. I said, "Oh, I know why. Because he was the one, right?" And how I actually managed not to end up finding a way to invest in the Eric's company was really a monumental mistake. Now, I tell you why I thought that way. Because I said, what would have happened in a world that everyone needs to jump on Zoom, right? What possibility do we have that everybody just cannot meet face to face? I just can't think of anything that would cause that, right? And sure we did. We had a pandemic, okay?
Now you can. Yeah.
Now we can. So to me, I would say I learned a lot in that process.
Wow.
And I should have think of things differently. And because he did a few people will build a company this old-fashioned way to be this precise and this good, right? I don't think he's gotten enough credit of how well he has built this company. People, obviously, they know how much Zoom has grown in user count, right? And active user space. But I don't think they give him enough credit of how well he has built it, the people that is hired, the way that he structured it. It's just a remarkable success, right? This is such rare find.
Well, and I think there's also a lesson in that story. We have all these super special people in our orbit that never necessarily come to us and say, "Hey, I'm raising. Would you be interested?" And it's I've had a couple of those where they said, "I thought you would have come to me because you knew what was going on." And it's like you gotta kind of be aware of what's going on around you. And
by the way, you have to stay in touch with people in good weather or bad weather, in good time and bad time, and even when nothing's happening, right? So because if you think of them as friends, you don't never contact your friends, right? So that's important. Drop them a note once in a while.
On today's special segment, we have Monique Woodard of Cake Ventures. Monique, can you tell us a story about a good or a bad pass, a story about a startup that you passed on?
Oh, the anti-portfolio.
Yeah.
I'm always going to go for the bad pass because that's my mistake, not, oh, look how smart I am that I did not invest in this company that then didn't work out, which is, I don't know, that's a bit of a...
like the humble brag.
Right. I think I spent a lot of my time as an angel investor and then as a scout. And being capital constrained has certainly led me to not being as able to deploy capital as I wanted to, which then you go out and raise a fund and you fix that, right?
Yeah.
So I love Delane from Plavius. And I met him in Detroit when he was just starting. And I think he's a brilliant founder, and I would have loved to have backed him. Yeah, that's the one. Well, I mean, trust me, there are and will be many others, but that's the one that sticks out today.
Well, let's hope you get the access to capital that you need, and those decisions change in the future.
For sure.
On this special segment, we have Ben Sun of Primary Venture Partners. Ben, can you tell us a story about a good or a bad pass? A story about a startup that you passed on?
I mean, there's a lot of them. I'd say one, which I think probably ties with the process of like building a firm and taking folks that are more in the junior investor ranks and making sure you're developing the right way. And this is probably a good lesson learned for me, something I didn't do well. One of our first kind of senior associate / principals that we hired when we first started Primary is this guy, Byron Ling. Byron's now a partner at Canaan. Great guy, did great work for us. He had been tracking Zach at Roe or Roman for years before Roe started. He had me meet Zach early on before Zach even had the idea for Roe. So he was someone that we were, under this talent scout model, definitely like tracking and paying attention to. And his co-founder, Rob, I know him for a while as well when he was at BarkBox, et cetera. And so we'd known these guys for a while. And when they started Roman, Byron was already working us for 2 to 3 years and really starting to push. And I said, hey, I want to start getting you in the mindset of like being a real check writer and you having to make, the decision on a deal or not. And so I thought I kind of conveyed that as the mindset. And so he went and met with these guys again and said, okay, they're ready to raise. We should jump all over this. It's going to get this heat on this. And so we had them come in and they walked us through the Roman model of what they were going to start with on ED medication, erectile dysfunction medication. And during the discussion after they left, I definitely had some real concerns, right? So having done Coupang and understanding Amazon's business model, and I've done a lot of things around e-commerce, I'm like, wow, if you're selling third-party product and if Amazon has any inclination to do that category, you should watch out. Like they've run over plenty of people. And at that time, Amazon started working on HIPAA compliance. It was obviously they were going to go after pharmacy. It was like it was not very public, but there was enough information knowing that they're going to do it. Pharmacy is a really important category for retail. Like if you look at a Walmart customer, if they use pharmacy, I think they're like 3 or 5x lifetime value for a Walmart customer if they use pharmacy, just because they have to come in and get their meds all the time. So I'm like, Amazon's going to go after this really hard. And so you're trying to sell, Viagra or the generic form of Viagra, and Amazon's going to go sell it. I'm like, ooh, I think it's tough, right? Yeah. And so I brought that up in the meeting, but when I think Byron heard that, I think me being senior, and he kind of read me, was just like, I guess I should just move on. Mm-hmm. And so he kind of like started backing off the deal. And then the deal was, we never got to even put out a term sheet. It just happened so quickly. And then Byron and I talked about it later, and I was like, he really wanted to do it. But when I kind of gave him that concern about the business, he just took it as like, I should just back off. And I was like, no, Byron, like having partners, like I rely on my partners, I guess when I co-founded the firm with my partner, Brad, to kind of push me on my thinking and to do a lot of gut checks. But like, I need to build my own conviction, right? At the end of the day. And I should have really emphasized that, Byron, like as part of your career, like I'm going to tell you, like, I want you to be a check writer, like take my sentiment, but I want you to build your own conviction. And it doesn't mean you have to pound the table. If you say like, I want to do this, we're going to make the bet on you that, your decision-making and your instincts are right. And, him and I talked about it after he left and had that conversation and realized that like, that was how he read the situation, which was not what I intended. And I realized, okay, as we develop kind of our investment team, I need to make sure they understand that. I can definitely be very persuasive in my arguments, which I learned is something like a trait definitely of mine that could be, counterproductive to the more junior investment teams that are trying to build their own conviction and need to find their own way.
It's so hard when less experienced folks are trying to make investment decisions and they hear anything that's adverse, coming from somebody with more experience. I mean, we have that on my team, and my initial experiences as an angel investor back in 2012, 13, 14, I remember at the finish line passing on Four Kites, Chip Bob, Logic Gate, because other angels that were a part of my little group said that they were terrible ideas, and it was so confusing to me, but I was brand new to this, so I I didn't cut the check. Should have cut the check. But yeah, it's a dynamic that's tough in groups.
But and I'm curious, and Nick, for you, I mean, I'm sure you've done a lot of interviews. I like some of the investors I've been so impressed by is when there are so many people that are kind of naysayers, and it's, can you say it contrarian? Maybe, but like they just build their own conviction and they do the deal. Mm-hmm. And, Neil Maida from Green Oaks, was a personal investor in Coupang early on. And, in the early days, we kind of struggled to raise money, but, Neil stepped up and led the A, and it was his first fund. He was, I think, late 20s. And he knew, like a lot of other investors said, no, or this is not a good fit. And that amount of courage for Neil to be like, all right, this is your first fund, and all these other established smart people are saying no, for him to be like, say, okay, no, I think we should do it, really is impressive, right? I mean, it takes amount of like courage and conviction. And that's been an amazing investment for Neil and Green Oaks. And now I consider Neil one of the best investors in the industry. And I think because of that level of own conviction is what kind of sets, I think great investors apart.
That will conclude this installment of Investor Stories. If you're enjoying the program and would like to see it continue, take a moment and leave a 5-star review in iTunes. Also, if you'd like updates on new content from TFR, as well as the top 10 VC articles every week, go to fullratchet.net and sign up for the newsletter. Okay, that will wrap things up for today. Until next time, over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for joining me.